it! Just do it! Don't let your dreams be dreams. Yesterday, you said tomorrow. So just do it! Make your dreams come true! Just do it!
Welcome to Successful Dropout. This podcast is for the outliers, the innovators, the rebels, those that dare to dream and act on their dreams. I'm your host, Kylan Ginger. Join me as we find out what it takes to drop out, grind, and succeed. This episode is brought to you by Praxis. Guys, if you've been listening for a while and you're inspired to drop out, grind, and succeed and to start turning your dreams into reality, Praxis helps you go from student to startup in just 9 months, okay? To land your dream job or to start your own company, you don't need to sit in more classrooms or blast out resumes or go through years of training. You can start today. Praxis combines a 3-month professional bootcamp with a 6-month paid apprenticeship at a startup that leads directly to a full-time job. And startups aren't just for coders, by the way. There's sales positions, marketing, operations. Even if you're not sure what you're interested in, Praxis places you with a growing, dynamic company where you get paid to do work you love to do, where you get to become part of a team, and where you learn how to create value. It's not just an internship, it's real work. In addition to the apprenticeship, you complete an intensive education program that combines professional development training, skill building projects, and one-on-one coaching. You'll leave the program with a full-time job offer and the skills and experiences you'll need to work for any company that you want to work for or to even start your own company. No degree is required to get started on your career, guys. Whether you're an ambitious go-getter right out of high school, a creative thinker who's bored in college, or a college grad looking forward to something better than more school or a cubicle job, Praxis is a phenomenal resource for you. $50,000. Okay, $50,000 is the average salary that Praxis graduates are getting with these full-time jobs that they get right after the program in less than a year. If you want to learn more, go to discoverpraxis.com, discoverpraxis.com, and let them know that you found out about them through Successful Dropout and start turning your dreams into reality, guys. And with that being said, let's get to the show. What is up, Successful Dropouts? Get stoked because today on the show we have Isaac Morehouse. Isaac is an entrepreneur, thinker, and communicator dedicated to the relentless pursuit of freedom and an advocate of self-directed learning and living. He's the founder and CEO of Praxis, an intensive 9-month program combining a paid apprenticeship at a startup with personal coaching, professional development projects, and interdisciplinary education leading directly to a full-time job offer for those who want more than college. He is the author of 6 books, and he's also the host of the Isaac Morehouse Podcast, where he talks about education, entrepreneurship, big ideas, and how to put them into practice and how to live free. When he's not with his wife and kids or traveling, he's smoking cigars, playing guitar, watching sports, and doing a whole bunch of other cool stuff. So, Isaac, that's the intro I have for you, man, but tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you do.
I don't know. That intro makes me sound more interesting than probably whatever I'm going to say. So that's well done. So yeah, great to be here. I really appreciate you bringing me on, Kylan. Yeah, I mean, I Praxis is what I live and breathe. That's my company. That's my baby. That's my life. And really, I guess I would say I have a life mission of sorts, without sounding cheesy, that I love freedom, and I want to make myself and as many people as I can as free as possible. And freedom takes a lot of forms, but I think it really starts with a mindset of understanding you are the driving force in your own life, that you can get off what I call the conveyor belt mindset, that you just sort of, you're plopped down based on age and whatever, and you're just moved along. The momentum is someone else. As long as you just obey the rules, you're just kind of moved to the next stage of life. And real freedom starts with getting off that conveyor belt, which dropping out is an incredibly real, tangible way, probably the biggest way to get off that conveyor belt. And then you can begin, now that you're kind of free of somebody else's track for you, now you can begin asking the interesting questions. How do you build your life? So that's what motivates me. And it's kind of motivated me throughout my life, but since launching Praxis about 3 years ago, that's really almost Praxis is kind of the incorporated form of my life philosophy, if you will.
Yeah. Now, Isaac, you are a little bit different from most of the guests I have on the show. In fact, I think you're the first guest on the show that is not a dropout. And so I'm not exactly sure how you got on even, but
I totally,
but here you are.
Yeah. I'm a poser.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I feel kind of, I'm a late bloomer in many ways. I didn't get started with entrepreneurship in earnest until much later than I would have liked. I didn't drop out, even though I had all the realizations about college. But you let me on the show, so I'm appreciative of that.
So were you doing entrepreneurial stuff before college? Did you kind of grow up with that talent, I guess?
Yeah, it's funny because at the time, growing up, I probably would not have said that. I probably would have not used the word entrepreneurial.
Right.
Didn't know much about it, but in retrospect, that was definitely the case. So I was homeschooled.
That explains a lot, actually. As was I. Yeah.
It really does. I mean, growing up, it was always funny. We would go to the store or whatever with my mom, and I had an older brother and an older sister, and you always get people who would say, oh, like right in front of us, right? While we were standing there, my mom would say, we homeschool. Oh, aren't you worried about their socialization? And I was always thinking to myself, all the kids I know who are just like idiots and bullies and don't know how to relate to anybody except for people that are exact same age, they're all the ones that go to school. Like I never seem to notice this mysterious socialization problem. But so I was homeschooled, and I grew up, my dad was in a car accident when I was 3, and so he has a closed head injury. He can't walk. He needs 24-hour care, has no sort of short-term memory. And so he was in the house, but he was not like a normal fatherly figure. He required care rather than the other way around. And so my mom is like taking care of him, homeschooling us. By necessity, we just were really independent. And we kind of had to take care of ourselves in many ways. I always had lots of, from age like 10, I had jobs, delivering papers, working at grocery store, whatever. And so there's always sort of an industriousness and an independence that I kind of took for granted. My mom wanted to homeschool us, but in reality, she kind of unschooled us because it was just too much to keep to a schedule. And she always felt guilty about it at the time. But looking back, I was just so glad of that. So, I went to... So I was homeschooled pretty much the whole way through my sophomore year, I guess, of high school. Several friends had gone to this small private school, and their basketball team was better than the homeschool basketball team. So I wanted to go there. And so I went for that 1 year, and it was fine. But I just remember thinking, man, this is such a weird setting. We're all corralled like cattle into these classes based on when a bell dings, and the classes are all the exact same amount of time. Some of the kids can barely cut it. Some of the kids are way ahead of things, but they're all going on the same schedule. This just seems so strange. There's no independence. It was cutting into my ability to work. I was used to working more often and earning money, even at a young age. And it just was kind of regimented. So after that 1 year, I went to community college. So I was 15, and my mom had to drop me off and pick me up from college. So I went to community college basically full time. I would work 2-3 days a week, go to class 2-3 days a week, and took full credits. And so got my associates basically when I would have been graduating high school, and then transferred to the university nearby, or where I transferred all my credits. And I was just like, I want to get through here as fast as possible. I was really practical. I was paying my way through school. I was working 2 or 3 days a week and cramming in about 15 to 18 credit hours on the other 2 to 3 days a week to just finish as fast as I could. And then I was using my summers to travel abroad and do stuff.
Right.
And so I got my bachelor's when I was 19. But during this time, I was like, no, and that's not like, oh, I'm so proud of it. Like, that's how silly it is. That's how silly it all is, though. Like, anybody could, like if I went to a community college in like a really crappy generic state school. There was nothing, it wasn't my intelligence. And I remember realizing when I was in college, and the community college was actually better, by the way, because like, there was some older students there who kind of were there because they actually wanted to learn. So there was like a slightly higher, not much higher, but slightly higher percentage of people there for the learning, which is really weird because that's not what most people want in college. They want the piece of paper. So I remember I had this realization. I thought, nobody seems to want to be here. In fact, if an alien race came down and visited and walked into a typical college classroom, and they didn't know anything about Earth or our, institutions or anything, and you said, what do you think you're observing? I guarantee they would say this must be a penal colony, because you're in these cinder block cells with these fluorescent lights. Everyone looks miserable, including the professors or TAs much of the time. No one looks like they want to be there. And then if you said to them, no, these people are actually here by choice. In fact, they're paying tens of thousands of dollars to subject themselves to this. That would be really hard, I think, for someone to imagine, because the whole thing's just strange. So I remember I came across economist Brian Kaplan, who does great work. He had done work on the signaling theory of education and basically revealing that the thing people are purchasing is not the knowledge, it's not the connections, it's not the social experience, it's not all of those other things. Those are all great if they happen, but if you really wanted those, you could move to a college town and live there without paying tuition, and you could do everything. You could even sit in on classes and get the knowledge. You could get literally everything except for the official piece of paper for free.
Yeah.
Why don't people do that? Because that's not the product they're buying. And so they're buying this signal that's supposed to be a magic ticket to a job. And so I remember I once I discovered this, things made a lot more sense, because I thought it was weird that like I was never treated like the customer. College was just sort of like, it's like healthcare now, because there's a third party that's paying for it. The providers are not accountable to the consumers. The professors didn't care if I was happy or unhappy. They weren't really accountable to me. They had no threat of having their pay docked if I was unhappy. So there wasn't that direct accountability. Nobody seemed to want to be there. And when I came across this signaling idea, I totally believed it, and I still thought it was necessary. I thought, and keep in mind, this was 13 years ago, and so I was like, there wasn't really anybody talking about an ed bubble. The MOOCs didn't exist. So I was kind of like, well, I guess I still just need it. Let's just get it as quickly and painlessly as possible. In retrospect, I actually didn't need it. In fact, I don't think I ever needed it for any job that I got. But long story, I know I'm blabbing a lot, but long story short, this was the moment where the seed for what would become Praxis was planted. So I accept this idea that it's the signal. And then one day I think to myself, what is the actual value of this signal that I'm purchasing? This signal that says, I'm better than somebody without this signal. When I go on the job market, that's what it says. How valuable is that compared to how much I'm paying? And I remember I looked around the classroom one time, and there was all these kids, and these were kids that like couldn't get into Michigan State University, which is not known for like academic rigor. So it's not like Ivy League or something,
right.
Maybe other people have had different experiences, but they're all kind of like head on their desk, like, dude, I'm so hungover. What do you want to do tonight? Let's go get wasted again, And they're just sort of, it's just kind of there, just very unserious to me. And I looked around and I thought, every one of these kids is going to graduate with the same degree that I have, maybe a few points different in GPA, but they're going to have the same degree. So what I'm purchasing is a signal that says I'm roughly as good as that guy. And I thought, man, that is a ripoff. but I wasn't imaginative enough or creative enough at the time to think about, if that's what I'm buying, can I build a better signal? Is there a better way? But so I had this idea for like a different version of college that would be combined with work experience. It'd be directly accountable to the students. And I kind of wrote up this little cheesy business plan. I didn't know what to do with it. I was 19. I kind of put it to rest and sort of went about my merry way until the idea resurfaced more than a decade later.
Okay, now, and I want to go into that, the start of Praxis, but really quick, you mentioned an education, bubble earlier. Can you speak more to that and what that means exactly?
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's a narrative now that's really common. I mean, you'll see, if you Google it or just if you browse social media, you'll see an article about, does college cost too much? There's an education bubble. And it's probably still a minority opinion among sort of average Joes, but there is a sizable and growing chorus of people questioning this idea that a college education is just worth it no matter what, for all people, all times. It's just infinitely valuable, pay whatever it costs. Very similar to the way people treated home ownership before 2008.
Right.
Homes can only ever go up in value. It doesn't matter what they cost, just buy one. Keep refinancing. It doesn't matter. It's an investment. And it's like, well, no, I mean, a college degree is no more a good investment than a pickup truck is a good investment. You would never say every single 20-year-old should buy a pickup truck. It's worth it. Doesn't matter what it costs, just get it. It's like, well, no. I mean, there are some people in some circumstances for which it might be exactly what they need, if they have a trash hauling business or something, but that's just an absurd statement to try to apply this across the board. It's worth it. But so today, that the narrative is that maybe there's some kind of a bubble. There's disagreement, but it's a viewpoint that everyone's heard, that maybe college isn't worth it. Back then, 12 years ago, nobody was talking like that. I mean, there was nothing. The only people who talked about dropping out or opting out of college, it was like, oh, that's just like losers or people who are going to be welders, and many people assumed that welders were also losers, which is sort of a very aristocratic, condescending viewpoint. But so that was kind of it. It was like, oh, the skilled trades maybe, or if you're going to be a hairdresser, but there's no professional success, corporate success, and startups were not the big thing that they are now then, without college. So that really wasn't part of the conversation like it is today.
Okay, now transitioning, like you were more into the start of Praxis. Now, how did that come about? You were 19 when you kind of had the idea, and then what happened? Yeah. So it was a really long and winding journey. Like I said, I'm a late bloomer in a lot of ways. And I mean, someone might be like, whatever, you graduated college when you're 19, haha, late bloomer. But that's just an official credential. I don't think that's very important. I think in terms of realizing the power of my own ideas and having the courage to act on them, I didn't really have a lot of people around me who really embodied that, where I saw like, wait a minute, this is possible. I can create stuff for myself. And so I think I thought small. I didn't think big enough long enough. And I probably still don't think big enough. Like that's what I always want to challenge myself with. But so I had this idea, and I actually used to walk around this old building in downtown Kalamazoo, Michigan, where I lived. And I would imagine if I own this building, I would turn it into this sort of better version of college. And there was some cool stuff in my idea, but it was pretty very raw. Right.
Well, so I didn't know what to do with it. I put together a PowerPoint and showed my brother, and he's like, cool, what do you do now? I don't know. So I went about my merry way. And basically I have always had a rule for myself, which is don't do stuff you hate. And I'm not big on long-term goals or defining like what is my one career calling or whatever. I don't know. What I'm doing now, I didn't even know existed 10 years ago. So I'm glad I didn't try to pick something. So instead, I've just followed the opposite approach, which is don't do anything that I hate doing. That's dull and that's boring. And as long as I'm not doing something I hate, all other activities are fair game. So just do a bunch of stuff and sort of see what happens. And so I kind of pursued this passion to make the world a freer place. First, I thought, oh, well, I'll go into politics. And that was just a horrible way to direct your energy. Politics is just a giant trap. It's not where good things get created. It's not where freedom is created. Politics is a lagging indicator of changes that have already taken place in society. If you want to drive those changes, be an entrepreneur, be a thought leader, not a politician looking to divide up the pie, where the beliefs have already gone. So I figured that out after like 3-4 years. Took me longer than it should have. Public choice theory is a phenomenal economic discipline that helped me sort of understand why politics is fundamentally screwed. And so then I kind of was in the realm of education, working with some think tanks, working with an organization that basically helps college students get into careers in journalism, policy, academia, sort of thought careers. And so I was doing career mentorship, guidance stuff there. Then I started doing fundraising for that same organization. And all along I was sort of trying to figure out like both what is it that really drives freedom in the world for individuals, and what is it that like is really my unique advantage. And so each of these was sort of my next best. Well, this looks like the best option given what I know now. And I'd always kind of had in the back of my mind, I mean, really it was like in my subconscious. I actually had forgotten about that old college alternative business plan for years until I found it on my hard drive. But I was always kind of just pursuing things of interest to me. When it all started to really come together, so I was doing fundraising now. So I was traveling the country, talking with a bunch of entrepreneurs who had been very successful, who believed in the mission of this organization I was working for. And I had spent years before that working with a lot of students. And the students were all telling me, and they're all very smart students, I have a degree, I have debt, but there are no jobs. No jobs, the economy's rough, whatever. Mm-hmm. And then I'm talking with all these entrepreneurs who are saying, my biggest constraint for my business is talent. It's always talent. Yeah. I'm always hiring. There just aren't any good people to hire. And I thought, man, this is a really bizarre set of circumstances. All these entrepreneurs are hungry for talent, and all these young people are claiming there's no jobs. yet they've spent how much time and money, and most of them would just get disheartened, and then so they'd go to grad school as let me just double down on this, bad investment. And so and at the same time, the online education space was sort of a big thing, and I was doing a little bit of stuff with an online educational platform, and that was really the point at which the informational side, the knowledge side of education, became truly irrelevant of a structured education. Because in a place like the United States, the knowledge, the information is all free and it's all accessible to everyone now.
Absolutely, yeah.
There's nothing that you need to sit down in a bricks and mortar classroom to get from one person. Now, there's things like a community of people to discuss with, whatever. You can go have coffee. You can, there's value to getting together in the meet space with people. But that component, the informational component, it had broken wide open. And so now I thought the market is all about that signal. And there's going to be a lot of people saying we can build a better signal. We can sell you a signal that instead of Harvard, it says, Minerva or whatever. And I thought, that's cool, that's interesting, but I want to go one further, because I think what technology has also done has create a possibility that it is easier than ever before to build your own signal. So if you're to go way back in time, for all of human history, the reason that credentials matter is because transaction costs exist. And so if I meet you for the first time and we've never met, and you say, hey, I'm Kylan, I'm a cool guy, you should trust me. You should hire me. I'm going to say, well, I don't know you from Adam. Well, how can I trust you? Now you've got to bring something. In the old days, it was your family name, your signet ring or whatever. And this carried weight because it was a way to vouch for you, because I had no way to prove who you really were. Then fast forward, 50 years ago, it was your degree. I went to Harvard. Okay, Harvard is vouching for you. I'm putting my trust in them. That sort of extends to you. So that lowers the information cost of me. I don't have to go out and spend all this time researching who you are and trying to figure it out if you're telling me the truth or not. I'm going to put my trust in this institution. Those transaction costs, because of technology, have dropped dramatically. Now I can Google you. And if you have a personal website and you have a podcast and you have an ebook and you've got a LinkedIn profile, I can immediately see a signal of how valuable you are that's more important than what a degree could be.
Yeah.
So there is already at your fingertips a signal that's worth more than your degree. Whether or not you have a degree, you can build something worth more than that already. And so I thought this is a mindset that people need to understand. So anyway, I got all excited about all that stuff, sort of slowly putting these pieces together.
Right.
And then I had sort of a moment of epiphany where I kind of realized that the real world experience in the apprenticeship, which is such a cool model that's kind of been lost to history, the apprenticeship experience combined with understanding that you've got to build your own signal, become your own brand, build the skills that matter to you, and find a way to let the world know that. If we could combine all of that into as condensed of a package as possible, we've got something here that's just leaps and bounds ahead of anything else on the market.
And so now how did that, tell me about the startup process and that kind of journey to turn this vision into reality.
Oh man, it's a crazy, so really this is going to sound super sensational, but it's true. So I was working in my fundraising job and I really loved it. I had a ton of autonomy traveling the country.
Right.
But I get restless, I think it took me too long to discover that I'm a creator, I'm a builder at heart, and I need to be making new things. And so I was kind of restless. I didn't know why. So I live in Charleston, South Carolina. I went for a walk on the beach. This is where I go. I like that infinite horizon. It helps me think.
Yeah.
So I go for a walk on the beach just to clear my head. And I see in my mind's eye, like I don't literally see it like a hallucination, but I see in my mind's eye the word Praxis floating over the horizon. I'm not kidding, in all caps. And it was like out of nowhere. I was just walking. I don't remember what I was thinking about. And it like triggered just a flood. And it was like the whole business plan with that one word that I sort of imagined just came into focus. And I actually ran to my car. I drove home. I went up to my office. I sat down for about 3 hours straight. And I just like sweating furiously typed out what became like the business plan of Praxis. Really? And a lot of the marketing copy that was really, some of it's still used today. And that sort of eureka moment sounds really dramatic. that wasn't the result of one big giant moment all of a sudden out of the blue. There's a book I love called The Act of Creation by Arthur Koestler. Phenomenal book. And he talks about these sort of eureka moments, whether in science, in technology, even in humor, the moment where you tell a joke and the punchline is revealed. That the eureka moment, the act of creation, is really the result of a lot of work that the subconscious has been doing over a long period of time. And so I had sort of filed this problem away that I had 10, 12 years ago about a better version of college and kind of just stuck it in the back of my mind. And it was ruminating around in there, and it was bouncing around with other things. And then I'm learning all these new things, and I'm meeting employers who say they need talent, and I'm meeting young people who can't find jobs, and I'm seeing what's happening in education. And I think it all was like my subconscious was doing some work for me, you know? Yeah. And it sort of came to the forefront, and I just got it because all the pieces were already there. And I just had that flash, that moment where I was like, all you have to do is put this together. You have a network of businesses, amazing startups that are hungry for talent, and they don't have the ability to build big recruiting apparatus and go and set up all these internships and recruit on campuses, but they need talent. And these are the most interesting places to work, 10, 20, 50, 100 employee companies, fast growing. Give them people, you vet them and you train them and you select high quality people. Let them apprentice there while you're giving them the essential training to help them sort of de-school their mindset, get off the conveyor belt and really think about building value, building a portfolio for themselves, all the skills that they need. Condense this into the most compact package possible. Boom. And it just sort of came to me. So yeah, this was all while I was working elsewhere. So I just bootstrapped it. I mean, at first it was just on the side, I was working a lot for my other job and just kind of on the side when I could. I had a rule that every single day, 7 days a week, I had to do at least one thing to move the idea forward. And I thought, I'm going to just do this. And if I ever get to a point where the only thing left to do requires more money than I have, then maybe I'll have to go raise money or something. But until I literally run out of every possible thing I can do, I just want to see how long I can bootstrap this. So that's what I did.
Okay, now so give us a quick overview of Praxis and the program and what it all entails.
Yeah, you bet. So it's changed and morphed just a tiny bit over the years, but the core has remained unchanged. So Praxis is a 9-month program, and it starts with a 3-month professional development boot camp where this is done virtually. Participants, they build their own website. They complete a series of projects, an intensive writing module where they're blogging every day for 30 days. They're learning some basic software tools that are used in a lot of businesses like MailChimp and Salesforce and whatever, just so they have a proficiency with a lot of these things. And in that 3-month boot camp, they're getting weekly coaching sessions with their advisor. They're doing weekly group discussions, but they're also doing interviews. They're being shopped out to business partners. They build a personal pitch deck and, we help them prep. And then they're doing some interviews with business partners in our network to find their placement where they're going to be apprenticing. Then after that 3 months, they've got their placement. The next 6 months, it's a paid apprenticeship at a startup. And they're going to move to wherever their startup is. They're going to live and work there. And they're working there full time while they're continuing to do a pretty intensive Praxis curriculum alongside it, and the coaching is continuing, and sort of it's a really cool combo of structure but self-guided, and everything has a deliverable at the end. You're not just sort of jumping through hoops for the heck of it. You're creating a project that you want to create based on your own goals with a deliverable at the end, and we're sort of there for coaching and accountability. And then at the end of the 9 months, you get a full-time job from your business at a minimum of $40K. The average is more like $50K. Most of our participants do not have any degree. We've had 17-year-olds get a $50,000 a year job at a startup from going through the program. I got a guy who skipped his senior year of high school to do the program. And we have some people who already have a degree who are 25 and they still just, they haven't been able to really get into a career that they're interested in. So, 3-month professional boot camp, 6-month paid apprenticeship, full-time job at the end. And it's a pretty intense and amazing experience with a really robust community too. That's really what makes it. Yeah. The people who are a part of it,
Mm-hmm. And being able to network with everybody. And what's the success rate kind of with placing somebody on a full-time job like that who starts the Praxis program?
Yeah. So, 100% now. So the way the program used to work was there was not a guaranteed job at the end. And when that was the case, 98%. There was only one person who didn't get a full-time job at the end of the program, and they eventually did. Now the structure is if you successfully complete the program, you get a full-time job, guaranteed. And so we've had 100% since then, and that's because from the get-go, I mean, it's really competitive. 15% of people, are accepted, but we're working your praxis advisor and your supervisor where you're apprenticing. They are conspiring for your success together. So as you're going through the praxis curriculum and stuff, we're talking with your business partner. Hey, what are areas they could improve on? How could they create more value for you? How can we help them learn that? I mean, contrast that. Can you imagine if you had a professor in college who was going out to your future employer and saying, what do you want them to get better at? And I will help them with that.
Oh, man, yeah.
That's what we're talking about.
That's phenomenal. And so who is this program for? What kind of person would thrive joining the Praxis program?
Yeah, it's really, we kind of have found a unique space. So it's anyone who is, I would say, entrepreneurial, but you're not at the point where you're like, I've got my own business, I know what it is, and I'm ready to launch it now. But you want to build things, you want to create things, you probably want to launch your own thing at some point, but you're not really ready. And so working with entrepreneurs, working at a startup and sort of getting the mindsets and the skills, the network, for a couple years, that's really an ideal next step. And so those sort of, I'm not ready to go out and launch my own company, but I'm entrepreneurial, or I want to help somebody else build a company, even if I don't ever launch my own. And another really interesting niche that we have is people who want to work at startups, but who are not coders. So there's a lot, if you're interested in code, there's a lot of great code schools. There's a lot of things you can just go teach yourself code, GitHub, profile, portfolio, and try to go get a job. But for sales, marketing, operations roles, people who are not coders, and we do have some, programmers go through Praxis, but it's primarily non-technical talent. And they don't understand, like, there's tons of demand at startups for that skill set as well. And so really those kind of non-technical, it's often like jack of all trades. Like, I don't know, I don't have a specialty yet. I'm young, I'm super hardworking and ambitious. I know I'm kind of entrepreneurial. I want to build things. I want to get off the conveyor belt, but I don't have anything clear to do next. That's a perfect Praxis person because the program will really help you clarify those next steps.
I see. Now, kind of along that same vein, with Successful Dropout, I tell people that just as much as I encourage the right kind of people to drop out, I try to encourage the right type of people to stay in college, because dropping out isn't for everybody. Some people will thrive, some people won't. And so I'm curious to hear, Isaac, in your opinion, what kind of person should really consider dropping out of college, and what kind of person should, probably stay in?
I mean, look, here's my take. There's a relatively small number of really good reasons to go to college or to stay in college. If you know for a fact that you want to do something professionally that legally requires a degree. So a lawyer, a doctor, a bureaucrat, an accountant, a professor. I mean, really, a professor is the perfect person to go to college, because the entire education system, top to bottom, is actually designed for creating professors. That's what it's optimized for. It's a little worse at doing everything else. And the further you go down the line, the further removed from professor you are, the worse it is at getting you what you want. So professor, yes, something that legally requires a degree. And for those, I would also just say, if you know for sure that's the thing that's going to make you happy. Because what's hard is a lot of people say, I'm smart, I don't know what I want to do, I guess I'll be a lawyer because I'll make good money. And then you get trapped with all this debt and you get stuck and you're like, now I'm unhappy being a lawyer, but I can't afford to do anything else. Just know for sure. So if there's any uncertainty about one of those legally required degree areas, doctor, lawyer, whatever, go get a year or two work experience somewhere and see if you really like it first. Okay, so those are areas where, go get a degree. It's legally required. If you know you want to do that, do it. The only other thing is, like, if you know that your most enjoyable possible way you can spend the next 4 years as a consumption good is being a college student and someone else is paying for it, sure, why not? But I tend to think that's really showing a lack of creativity. Like, can you not think of another more fun way to spend 4 years and $50,000, $100,000? Like, you could you could buy a house with a couple friends, like, and just party every day for 2 years and then sell it and you're still better off, like, so college as a consumption good, I get it. There are a lot of people who are like, well, my parents are paying for it anyway. They won't pay for any alternative, whatever. If you really enjoy it and you just want to goof around for 4 more years on somebody else's dime, like, I don't know that I think that's going to do wonders for your creativity and productivity, but like, I get it, whatever, have a good time. But otherwise, man, I think you really gotta have a damn good reason. And there aren't very many. It's just what you can create that's better and cheaper and more effective is so plentiful. The other day I thought, what if you're really interested in finance? Like, what if you just went to New York and became an Uber driver for a year and you just went to all the areas where you're likely to pick up people who work in the financial industry and make it a point to learn one thing from each passenger every single ride? You'd probably learn more.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so anyway, I just think the burden of proof should be absolutely flipped. You better have a damn good reason for going to college because it's really expensive, it's really long, and it fosters a lot of bad habits that you're going to have to overcome later in life.
So good. Good word, man. And Isaac, you mentioned parents a little earlier. I know for a lot of our listeners, dealing with their parents is a challenge. Most parents have a mindset that a college degree is still it's the way to go, and they're willing to pay for that. And if you try to talk about anything else, most of the time they're against it. So for anybody kind of where their parents aren't really supporting that decision, what advice would you have for them?
Yeah, that's a really hard one because we get a lot of people really interested in the program who are like, my parents are the one obstacle. Yeah. So I usually tell people a couple things. Be undivided in your mindset in terms of be definite about your decision so that you are not going to your parents and bluffing them and saying, hey, I want to drop out and do something. And if they say, well, we're not going to support you at all, if you would say, okay, well, fine, I'll stay in college, then you're bluffing. Don't do that. There's no point in going unless you mean it, unless you're truly willing to do it, even if they get pissed off and even if they don't support you. Because now you're coming from a place of genuine honesty. So start off by knowing if you really mean it and knowing if you're willing to do it, even if they end up being upset about it. Because if not, then you're bluffing and you're just going to lose credibility with them. So if you know for sure, I would start small with something like, hey, mom and dad, I'm just really, I got to be honest, like I'm dying in the classroom. I'm bored. It's numb. It's not doing anything for me. And when I think about what I enjoy, what goals I have, I think there are much better ways to get there. I want to take a gap year. Start with that.
Yep.
I want to take 1 year, and don't just say, I want to take 1 year off where I just do nothing. That's what they're going to think. Say, I want to take 1 year and do the following. And give them some things, even if those eventually change. I want to do this other program, or I want to spend 3 months here, and then I want to work here for 6 months, and then I want to learn this programming language. Give them something concrete and say, it's for 1 year, I want to do it, and at the end of that year, I will, revisit and see, how I feel about things, whatever. Or don't even talk about the end of it. Just say, just give me 1 year. And if you can convince them that you have a good reason and that actually you're not running away from college because you're being a slacker, but in fact, college isn't challenging enough, you want to push yourself more with the following concrete reasons, I think that's huge. And then the final thing is, I would just say to them, not give them a threat or an ultimatum. Like, don't do it out of like anger, rebellion. Mom and dad, I'm quitting college. Like, the reason they oppose you is because they want you to be successful. And if their vision of success is incorrect, that's a fault of information. That's not because they're being evil. So I would approach them as an ally and say, hey, look, I love you guys. I want you guys to support me financially, emotionally, whatever. I want to have a relationship, but this is what I'm going to do. Like, I wouldn't ask them. I would say, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this year or whatever it is to do the following things, and I would love your support. If you don't support me, I'm going to do it anyway. So if I'm going to do it anyway, I guess I would rather have a good, healthy relationship with you than otherwise. And again, not like an ultimatum, not like a threat, but just being honest with them. Look, I've decided I'm going to do this. These are the following reasons. I would love for you to support me. In fact, if you give me half of what you were going to pay for my tuition, great. If you don't do anything, I'm still going to do it, but I hope we can still have a relationship. And now they realize the reason that they were going to get all upset with you is because they think that can convince you to do what they think is better. But once they realize you're not going to be convinced, now they're faced with the choice. Well, this is what my kid's going to do. Do I want a relationship with them or not? And 90% of the time, they're going to say, yeah, I still want a good relationship with them. Mm-hmm. So they'll usually say, all right, I guess I can't change your mind. I'll try to do what I can to support you, you know?
Yeah, and I think if you're doing it, just like you said too, just the resilience of your mindset, I think for a lot of parents, I know mine, would instill kind of a confidence in your kid. Like, okay, they're really serious about this. It's not, they're just going to go mess around. Yeah, so great point, man. And moving more into your just kind of personal entrepreneurial journey, I love to ask this question. If you could time travel back to day one of your entrepreneurial journey, so maybe the beginning of Praxis, and have 10 minutes with your former self to communicate any lessons you've acquired with the intention of saving yourself mistakes and heartache, what would you tell yourself?
Whew, that's a good question. I think I would probably say something like, in those difficult moments, your gut is more trustworthy than your brain. And I know that sounds kind of trite and maybe even a little bit cavalier, but I mean it. When I think about it, all the times where I've been like, I don't know, should we do this? Should we do, whatever, whether it's raising money or putting money into certain, some activity or another, or we've, hitting some major roadblock. Every time I've tried to really think my way out of the situation and get sort of really clever with a well-designed strategic, response, it's almost every time, pretty much every time, it's ended up being that what I really felt in my gut would have just been better. And it's not even that it's that much different, but it's just sort of like, I guess it's kind of deferring to others who supposedly know more than you versus doing what you know is uniquely you. So, if you're facing a problem like, I don't know, should we put all this money in to hire this marketing firm or whatever? All of the intelligent things say they know more than you. This will help. This will grow, blah, 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 blah. But something in your gut is like, I just don't think they're that good. I don't know a lot about marketing, but I know that I don't think it's going to be that valuable. Yeah. No. But look, this smart person said it. People tell you that you need to listen to others and bring on smart people. So, you go with all those reasons. I think I've just realized that I'm not anyone else. I'm me, and I need to play to my unique strengths. And I would rather fail doing the thing that feels uniquely suited to me than succeed just by following a cookbook. And every time when I've gone with my gut, it has not always worked out perfectly, but I think it's always worked out better than when I've tried to get overly clever. And maybe that's just because I'm not a very clever person.
Oh, no, that's a great point, man. It really speaks to me, too, because I'm definitely a thinker. If I'm not careful, I'll think a new idea to death before I actually act on it. And it's really tempting not to trust my gut a lot of the times. But no, you're absolutely correct. I think at the end of the day, if you can trust your gut and do what fulfills you, you're going to look back, I think, with fewer regrets, probably zero regrets.
I had a friend who said he had been reading a lot of biographies of really successful people and then reading some sort of, self-help type books and sort of the success genre. And he said, he said, after reading a whole bunch of these, I can basically summarize all of them. All of the highly successful people, they basically did the same thing. And I said, what's that? And he said, they just did things differently than everybody else. I thought, there's something to that. The things that you do differently, the times when you don't follow common advice, are probably the times where you're most likely to get the most results.
Oh man, so true. And honestly, I'm a big fan of Gary Vaynerchuk, and that guy, he's a very unique thinker, a very unique thought leader. And I was listening to his book, the Ask Gary Vee book, and he was talking about how he intentionally, the only other kind of social media that he consumes, or he watches the people that follow him just to learn how to relate to his market better. But he said he doesn't listen to a lot of books. He doesn't really follow a lot of what these other gurus and thought leaders are doing. And because of that, a lot of what he says, he's not just regurgitating stuff he's already learned. Sometimes he is saying the same thing as somebody else, but he's saying it in a way that's very unique to him. And it's something that even I've been focused on this last year. When you consume so much, listen to so many podcasts, read so many books, that can be a really powerful thing. At the same time, if you're trying to output a lot, be creative, at least for me, it's really easy to just start regurgitating stuff and not stop having original ideas, original thoughts, original words. And so even sometimes purging yourself of that kind of thing, I think can open up the creativity and unique ideas that create some of the most successful people, successful businesses. So,
that's a great concept. Taking those sort of occasional fasts, almost an information fast, can be real valuable.
Absolutely. Isaac, what's a personal habit that contributes to your success?
Writing every day. I write something every day. I used to publish something on my personal blog every single day. Now I publish something there, a few times a week, and I'll publish something on the Praxis blog. Usually what I write gets published somewhere, but I have to write something every single day. And ever since I implemented that discipline several years ago, it's not really an exaggeration to say that blogging every day sort of opened up the creative part of me that made launching Praxis possible. I started doing that before I launched Praxis, and I don't think I was the kind of person who was capable of building an entrepreneurial venture until I started doing that.
What's a quality that you have, a quality, personality trait that you would consider essential to being an entrepreneur?
Optimism, and I do think it can be learned.
Good point. What's a business book that you'd recommend to us, and why?
I'm sure it's been recommended on here before, but 0 to 1. 0 to 1 is phenomenal, and it's a gut punch in the best of ways.
What advice do you have for any of our listeners who are thinking of dropping out of college, but they haven't quite made that step yet? Just some parting words of advice.
Yeah, I would say just do it. You live one time. Life is too short to be bored. If you're bored and you're feeling a little soul dead sitting on the conveyor belt, what's the worst that can happen? Get off, quit. You go out there, even if you spend a couple years and later you realize that you want to be a doctor and go back to college. Okay, now at least you know why you're there. So I really, life is too short to be bored. Don't do stuff you hate.
Well, what advice do you have for any of our listeners who have already dropped out and who are already on their entrepreneurial journey or pursuing perhaps their dream job?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say with that one, so the two prongs. One is don't do stuff you hate. You already dropped out of college, so that's good. Don't drop out of college only to land in something else that you hate equally.
Yeah.
But just not doing things you hate isn't enough. You have to do something, and it doesn't matter. You don't have to pick the perfect thing. Just start doing things. Give yourself challenges, projects. I'm going to blog every day. I'm going to write a book. I'm going to launch a podcast. I'm going to learn a language or a programming language. Give yourself challenges and activities. Do things. Get a job. Get multiple jobs. Do freelance work. Sell your product. Put it out there. Don't be afraid to just do a lot of stuff.
Isaac, what's the best way that people can connect with you?
So the company, discoverpraxis.com. If you want to learn more about Praxis, go to discoverpraxis.com. And then personally, I'm just at isaacmorehouse.com. You can email me, Twitter, Facebook. It's all there, so you can check out isaacmorehouse.com.
Awesome. Well, successful dropouts, you've been hanging out with Isaac and Kylan, learning what it takes to drop out, grind, and succeed. For everything we talked about today, head over to successfuldropout.com and type Isaac into the search bar, and the show notes will pop right up with everything we talked about. And as always, stay hungry, stay foolish.